tonight back in Luke 15. We're going to dial the microscope in a little closer in the story of the prodigal son tonight. I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old little girl and a 2-year-old little boy. And they're awesome. It's fun. It's crazy. It's different than I expected it to be in a lot of ways. And in ways, it's better than I ever thought it'd be. In ways, it's harder than I ever thought it'd be to be a father. But being a father has taught me so much about the Bible and about how God relates to us. And it's just helped me understand so much about how great and amazing God is. Kids have a way in your heart where, you're in control because you're the parent, but really in a way they're in control. Because they have the ability to just rip your heart out of your chest at the smallest thing. My daughter just started kindergarten this year, which makes me feel really old. Nobody needs to say anything, I get it, I'm getting old. And on nice mornings, I'll walk her to school because we don't live that far from Roosevelt, and so I'll walk her up there, and we have to cross the avenue. It's a pretty busy street, so I have her hold my hand. And the last couple of weeks of walking her to school before it started getting cold, she started asking when it was okay to let go of my hand. And I'd be like, oh, why do you want to let go of my hand? She'd just be like, I don't know, if I don't have to hold your hand, I don't want to. Boo! I was just like, Mom, my heart hurts right now. This is my little girl, she's never pushed me away, ever. And then now, just a few months into going to school, she's like, do I have to hold your hand now, or can I put it down? And she's like, I only hold your hand when I have to, is how she lived it. And I was just like, ouch. And our kids, they have this way, as a parent, you just have such an incredible love for them that they can hurt you without even realizing it and not meaning to. And what we need to understand in the story of God, in the story of the Bible, is that God is the Father. That's the place He sits, and we are the children. And then when it relates to this story, we, like the prodigal son, we blew it as a part of the family, and we took off to do our own thing, and we ended up in destruction and hopelessness. And God is still the Father, and He's still perfect, and He's still trustworthy. And the Bible is clear that it hurts Him that He longs for everyone to turn back to Him. And so we pick up in the story once again of the prodigal son. And really, the word prodigal, if you're not aware, it's kind of a weird word. It's not a word we use in the English language. I don't think I've ever used the word prodigal outside of using it in reference to the prodigal son. In its simplest form, it means to be lavish or excessive. Lavish or excessive. So, the prodigal son means he was lavish and excessive. He was excessive with his father's wealth and his partying and doing it his way. And he was so excessive that he squandered all of it and it was gone. Really, this story should be called the prodigal father, if we were going to be more accurate in how we were depicting the story. Because it starts with a son who is excessive in his lifestyle and really got himself in a bad spot. But the excessiveness of the grace and love shown by the father in the story far exceeds anything that the son had done. So that word excessive, when you think about it, I was trying to think of an illustration to help us understand what does excessive mean, because even that's kind of a weird word we don't use a lot. And so I was thinking about back when I don't know if I was in grade school or just hitting junior high. I'm the youngest of 4, and one of my older sisters was dating this guy named Adam, and I thought Adam was the coolest thing ever. I mean, he's in a band that I really liked, and he was just cool, So I looked up to him, and when he'd be at our house, I would want to impress Adam and make him think I was cool. And so my sister's upstairs getting ready for an infinite amount of time. Girls, I don't get it. I don't get what, the process of taking a shower and then getting ready to leave the house should be able to be done in less than an hour and a half. Thank you for being honest. Okay, cool, now I know. At least you own it, that's what I like. So I'm sitting with Adam in our living room while he waits for my sister. And I wasn't thinking cool, so I'm like, hey man, you want anything to eat? Like, you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And he's like, okay. And so I go into the kitchen. I'm gonna make him the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich that he has ever seen. So I pull out the loaf of bread. There's probably about 2/3 left. I'd say 12 slices. I don't know how many slices are in a loaf of bread. But 12-ish or so slices. And I start lathering peanut butter and jelly on every piece of bread, and I make him a sandwich that is this tall. And I bring it to him, and I'll never forget his eyes popping out of his head. He's like, how am I supposed to eat this thing, dude? And I'm trying to impress him. And just the excessiveness of just a 12-layer sandwich. And just how over the top that is. How he in his mind never pictured that when I asked him if he wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that he would be getting the 12-decker peanut butter and jelly supreme. I have yet to open a restaurant, believe it or not. That's all I can think of, that's all I have. So the son of the story, as we've been over, he hits rock bottom. And when he hits rock bottom, he starts thinking in his head, and actually the scripture says when he comes to his senses, so he finally just kind of lets go of his pride and says, okay, I'm gonna starve to death. I need to think logically here. What should I do? And when he gets on that mindset, he starts to think, I have to think of how I can approach my father after what I've done. And so he composes a speech. And so then I was trying to think, is there anything in my life that relates to this thing? And so then I was like, man, you know what? One time my dad asked me while they would be out of town to watch his bird and to feed it and take care of it. And I don't know what happened. I mean, I think a bird should be able to go a day or two without food and water. But this one couldn't. Because a couple days had gone by, and you have that moment where you're like, uh-oh, I forgot something. So I rushed over to my dad's house, and this bird was so annoying. He probably thinks I did this on purpose. Because this bird was awful. I mean, the second you would open the door, and he was upstairs and down the hall. He wasn't near the front door, but he'd hear you, and he'd be squawking and going crazy. So I get over to my dad's house, and they're out on the sill, and I open the front door, and there's silence. And I'm like, it's all good? It's good. So I go up the steps, and I kind of peek around the door where the bird's at, and there he is, on his back, feet straight in the air, laying on the bottom of the cage, gone. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna tell my dad? And I'm pacing around his house, and I call Mallory, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh, I killed Dad's bird. I don't know what I'm gonna tell him. These things are super expensive. He seems to have some unknown weird attachment to this thing for who knows why. And I'm panicking. So I finally call my dad up, and I'm like, hey, Dad. And I'd gone over this in my head so many times what I was gonna say. I was like, so I don't know what happened, but the bird is dead, and I'm really sorry. And, he on the other end of the phone, I could just feel the calm even through the phone, and he's just like, oh, these things happen. And I'm like, really? That's it? That's all I'm getting? I mean, okay, cool, well, sorry about that. I'll throw them in the trash can, and you won't have a smelly dead bird when you get home. And it was awesome. I had prepared the speech and panicked and thought for so long, how is my dad going to react? And there was just this awesome grace in that moment from my father. Even as an adult, it was something that I desired, was this grace from my dad and not to have him upset with me. And so the son does the same thing. He composes in his mind this speech that he's going to give to his father. And it doesn't seem like a real fancy speech, but we're going to break it down. He says, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." This is what he plans to say. So let's break this down. Key point number 1, the son approaches with a repenting attitude. The son approaches the father with a repenting attitude. So, how differently do you think the father's response would have been if the son was like, "Look, I wasn't wrong, but I need some more money"? Not good. There has to be a repenting attitude. There has to be an attitude of, "I blew it. I realize I blew it. I'm sorry, and I'm seeking forgiveness. I'm seeking to restore what if anything, can be restored here." And admitting error is really a huge step to entering into a relationship with God. Because if you can't admit that you're a sinner, then you're really not accepting a relationship with God, because it all hinges on the fact that we were all sinners and Christ died for us. Key number 2, the son leaving was an act of disrespect against the father's life and legacy. So here's the thing, and we overlook this part of it, and maybe we don't think it all the way through, but when he goes to his dad and he asks for his inheritance, do you know what an inheritance is? It's what your parents leave behind for you when they die. That's what an inheritance is. So think of it this way. Let's say that your parents are rich, and you're like, "Man, I just want my money now." But you know that you don't get it until it's time for your inheritance, so you basically say, "Hey, can I just act like you're dead and have what I get when you die?" What a slap in the face to the father for the son to come to him and say, "Hey, I pretty much want to treat you like you're dead and get what I'm going to get out of this thing." That's harsh. That's so harsh. And so this is just a huge insult to the father. That the son is basically saying, "Your life is not that important to me. I'm more concerned what happens when your life is over and you're not around anymore. I'm more concerned with what I get from you." And as a parent, I really want my kids to look back at my legacy and my life when I'm gone and go, "Man, I'm so glad I had my dad, and look at all these things that he did for me, and look at the faith that he taught me to have, and all these things." You know, it'd be great to leave them money. I don't know that that's going to happen. If you want to be rich, don't go into youth ministry. Just some advice, life advice for you. But even if I can't leave them money, I'm hoping that they'll look back and they will miss me because of the things that I was able to give them, and most importantly, hopefully, a foundation of faith in Jesus Christ. And that's, I want them to miss me when I'm gone, not to be like, "Dude, you're not even dead yet, but I want what I'm going to get when I'm gone." That would destroy me. And this is what the son has done to the father. Key number 3, the son had abandoned his place as a part of the family. When he said, "I want my inheritance," and it's basically to me like, "You're dead," he's severing ties. He might as well not even call him dad anymore. He has basically said, "I'm out. I'm not a part of this family anymore. I've got this on my own, and I'm done. I want what I'm going to get from this family, and I have severed ties, and I'm moving on." So that's what's going on in the story. And kind of just taking a step backwards, the son comes with a repenting attitude. And if we look at the speech, he comes with a humble attitude and an understanding. He understands where he stands. He says, "I am no longer worthy to be called your son." And this is important. It's important for him to be in a spot where he understands, "I know what I have done. I understand how I have wronged you." And then he says, "Make me like one of your hired servants." So his request is, he thinks, is the most reasonable one he can give. He realizes, I don't have any right to ask this guy for anything, but I'm surely not going to ask to be part of his family again. Because, how could you do that? After doing this to your father? And so he has this simple speech. And the most important thing about the speech is that we find out it's not about the speech. It has nothing to do with how or what the Son was going to say, but about the heart and the attitude that he brought when he returned to the Father. This is where we sit here tonight with God. It's not about what we say to God. It's not about the things that we do or don't do for God. It's about where our heart is at and where our faith rests. If you're struggling, if you're wondering why your faith is always seeming to just fall short, if you're wondering, who is this God guy, and do I even want any part of him? Like, I know this life is tough, and I know that I'm searching for something. I know I need something. I know that I'm not the greatest person because I know I've done bad things, and but where does that leave me with God? We need to understand that it's all about faith and less about what we do. When I was 4, I said the sinner's prayer. And what the sinner's prayer is, it's the idea that once you decide you want to be a Christian, you'll say a prayer, and you'll pray to God and say, God, I know I'm a sinner, and I know that you died and you rose from the dead to pay for my sins, and I'm asking you to come live in my heart so that I can be forgiven and I can be part of your family. That's like the simple, short version of what the sinner's prayer is. A great prayer for someone to pray who's ready to give their life to Christ. But unfortunately, a lot of our culture, our Christian culture, has really made salvation all about, well, have you said the sinner's prayer? And really, that's not what saves you. It's God's grace that saves you and how you respond to God's grace. Romans 10:9 says, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So it's about a declaration of what you believe. And it's not just saying that you believe. Actually, James tells us that even the demons believe that Jesus is Lord. And they tremble in fear. They tremble in fear because they know who they are and they know that Jesus is Lord. It's not just about saying, like, yeah, I get it, Jesus is God, I guess I'm saved. Like, no, the belief that the Bible is talking about, that word belief, it's about a faith that sustains and changes your life. It's about a commitment, a lifelong commitment to God and his way, and accepting that he is your only hope and letting him live in you. What that means is you're letting God change you, literally. Literally, the Bible says that this old you, the sinful you, it dies, it goes away, and Christ comes and lives in and through you, and you're a new person. And it's this picture that we are just like Jesus, that we are dead in our sin, and that he can, because he defeated that death, raise us from the dead and live inside of us, and we can have real life. If you've prayed the prayer, that is an awesome thing, and I hope that you did it with an understanding that you are accepting and choosing that kind of faith, sold out faith, life-changing faith in Jesus Christ. When I was 4, that prayer meant nothing to me other than the fact that my brother was 7 and getting baptized and getting a lot of attention for it, so I wanted some attention from my dad too. That's what that prayer was for me. And guess what? It changed nothing in my life for the next 13 years until I truly gave my life to Jesus Christ and watched him change everything about me. The prayer doesn't save. Going to church doesn't save. Calling yourself a Christian doesn't save you. It's declaring with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believing in your heart, putting that faith in your heart that God raised him from the dead and you will be saved. Ephesians 2:8-9 says that it is by grace you have been saved through faith, not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so no one can boast. Here's what that verse is saying. Just about unanimously, every other religion, other than a Christ-centered focus, in this world has works attached to it, where it says you have to do this, and then maybe you'll be good enough for God. And there's all kinds of religions. Actually, when I was studying the religion of Islam, we were doing an apologetics class in our Sunday school over the summer, learned that most Muslims who practice Islam believe they have no clue where they stand with Allah at any given time, and they're just hoping that the scale is tipped one way or the other, and they never have any indication of what that is, and they're just hoping when they die that it was good enough. Is there any hope in that? There's no hope in that. That's hopelessness. And it's even more hopeless because it's so false. It is so wrong to think that God, Almighty, perfect God, could look at us in our sin and tell us, oh, well, we could somehow work our way back to perfection. And when the Bible tells us that we have sinned and the wages of sin is death and that we're separated from God, it's literally telling us in our spirituality we are dead. Dead things don't just come back to life. That's not something that just happens every day. Just ask every plant Mallory and I have ever owned. We can kill a cactus in like a week. It's crazy. You know what's never happened? One of those plants died and shriveled up, and we put it out by the dumpster and came back out, and it was a beautiful plant again. It's never happened. Dead things don't just suddenly become alive again. And that is the power and amazing story that Jesus brings. In our sin, we are dead. Dead means, even more so, to take it one step further, if a person dies, let's say in the hospital, you know, they like shock people back to life. If you've ever watched like a hospital TV show, I'm sure you've seen them use the defibrillator. You know, so that person, if they don't do that, they're dead, right? So they're not like totally dead yet, because if they can shock their heart and get things moving before everything's permanent. But you know what probably has never happened? I mean, I had to research this, but I'm pretty sure it's never happened. Like the dying person grabbing the paddles, being like, I better do this pretty quick, or it's gonna be over. Like, dead people can't change their own circumstances even more than anyone can change that for them. So when you're spiritually dead, when the Bible says that, it's giving us this image that it's over. Dead is dead. It's finished. Our sin killed us spiritually. Literally. Enter Jesus, the miracle worker, God himself, the only one who stands over death and defeats it. The only hope that we can have in death. And he says, yeah, I'll take that burden for you because I love you so very much that I want you to be restored as a part of my family. I want you to be restored as a part of my family. And I can come into your deadness and I can make you alive again. That's the amazing truth of the gospel. No other religion in the world has Jesus, which is why no other religion in the world works. Because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one will come to God except through him. Jesus is our conquering King who conquered death and gives us hope through grace. Through grace. And that's the point of this weekend, that we can enter this room as a group of people and individuals and be so hopeless and so broken and so just on the wrong path and just going, my life is going nowhere and it's hopeless and I don't know what to do and I don't know where all of your hearts are at, but I know that there were times in my life as a teenager where I was just like, I don't even know if I can handle this life. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, everything I do is just so messed up and so broken. And just the sadness and the depression that I deal with, it's so frustrating. And I don't know what to do. And then one day, a girl that I liked was supposed to be at a youth group across town. She didn't show up, which was super awesome since I did. And so I'm sitting in this room of people I don't know, and there were people there. There was a youth pastor and youth leaders who loved Jesus so much and so authentically and lived it out so real that I just had to know more. I had to understand this faith that they claimed. Because I grew up in the church, and for whatever reason, I was just blind to the things that I was being told until I had these relationships with these people who just lived out their faith, and I knew that they were different, and I had to know why. And my eyes were open, and I accepted Jesus. And all of a sudden, was my life perfect? No. There was a lot of hard things. There still is. There's hard things that I deal with. And I go through times where I'm bummed out about things, and I get frustrated with things, and things aren't perfect. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old, so things are almost never perfect. And at the end of the day, I have this amazing hope to look forward to. Because that's where this morning's message takes you. If you focus on the here and now and you let God into your life and change you here and now, all of this stuff about if and when becomes the hope of God's promises in His Word. That if and when isn't as scary or as important to me because I know God is in control and He's steering the ship and that I'm saved and that, hey, even when this life is over, I get to spend eternity in heaven with Him. Because I was a sinner and I was hopeless, but Jesus came and He paid my debt. And I have declared with my mouth that He is my Lord. And I believe with all of my heart that He died and rose for me and for you. And through that, I get to be saved. And that's where grace takes us. It can't take us anywhere else without taking us here first, to the gospel message. The understanding that for everything else about God to matter, we first need to accept that Jesus Christ needs to be the Lord and Savior of our life. So this message is called Speech Interrupted, and here's why. The Son composes the speech, and He comes back to the Father. The Father comes running after Him. And this is crazy. Okay, when you think about it from our perspective, in our culture, not as crazy as it sounds back in the day when Jesus is telling the story. Excuse me. He's illustrating something that in that culture would never, ever, ever, ever have happened. A father who's a head of a household and riches and servants and all of these things would never in his life run for any reason. It was disrespectful. It took him out of his place of honor. Would never do that. Especially in front of other people to meet up with a son who had so disgraced him and just trashed his name and made him so embarrassed. It would never have happened in that culture. The people listening to this story must have been like, dude, that's crazy. Because that would never have happened in Jesus' day. Someone in this father's position would never, ever have done that. And this speech, the son starts the speech. He starts it. The father gets to him, and he doesn't know what to do, so he starts kind of fumbling through the speech. He says, Father, I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And what happens? The father interrupts him. He doesn't even get to finish the speech, because the speech doesn't matter. And the father goes, get the robes, get the rings, kill the fattened calf, throw a party. My son was lost, and now he's found. It doesn't matter what you have to say, son. I know why you're here, and I love you, and there's grace for you. There's so much grace for you. So much so that there's going to be a party tonight. So much so that I'm rejoicing. It's not like, all right, well, you're back, but we're going to have to work on some stuff, or, I guess you